Welcome to the PRovoke Media podcast. I'm Megan Keogan, host of today's episode and head of partnerships here at PRovoke. We know that influencers drive action, and we know that when trustworthy influencers are leveraged in a campaign, patients will move to action. Even more so now than pre-pandemic, people are searching for health information, reading, listening to more podcasts about health, and looking on social media for health topics. As we emerge from the pandemic norms today, here we are discussing the question of whether or not these assessments are still hold true. In this episode, we'll hear from Amy Inzanti, Chief Strategy Officer of Marina Maher Communications, and Michele Randazzo, Director and Head of Oncology Communications at Eisai. Ladies, thank you both for being here with us.
Hello.
Hi. Amy, tell us a little bit about what you're doing and working on at MMC and the research that you've been conducting in the healthcare influencer space.
Perfect. Yeah. So Amy Inzanti, I am the Chief Strategy Officer, and I sit at a really interesting place in the agency where I get to look at all the data and the proprietary data that we have access to, and then I get to marry it to all the things that we can apply it to in the communications field. So MNC has been working with pharma and healthcare clients for decades. And over the past few years, what we've been really digging into is this healthcare influencer work. And exactly to your point, Megan, of what you were saying is that it's increased. People want to hear from influencers to start to construct their opinions and then, decide what they want to do. So we've developed a couple of tools and services for our clients to really figure out how to execute on those impactful influencer campaigns. We base that on three sort of philosophies. One is that you really have to understand people, right? What are they? Who are they? What are they looking for? What are their questions? Why, what concerns them? What keeps them up at night, right? So that we can understand what it is about your condition, about your health that you're concerned about. We also want to look at very precise ways to reach these folks, right? Because you can't just blanket everybody and hope that it's going to make an impact. You have to look at what counts and influencers and influences they are specifically looking to for this type of information. And so at MMC, we sit on proprietary data stack called OmniID that allows us to do just that. And then, of course, we want to develop content that resonates, right? We want to develop creative, compelling things that people are actually interested in watching and that they can learn from. So kind of these three things all mooshed up into one. We hope to make a difference in our patients' lives. One of the things that we are doing it for is for Eisai, and Michele has just been a tremendous partner. I mean, we've just been in it together for many, many years now. But we launched a campaign called Spot Her, which Michele, I'm not even going to try. You tell everybody about how wonderful this program is.
Sure. So I'm Michele Randazzo, and like Megan said, I'm the Director of Oncology Communications at Eisai. We're a Japanese pharmaceutical company, and our mission is human healthcare, which means we give our first thought to patients. And so, like Amy was saying, the tools that MMC is able to provide in their proprietary research are really very much in line with our mission and our effort to really understand patients and their experiences. And so those tools were very, very helpful in developing Spot Her, which we named because there's multiple meanings towards spot her, right? So spotting is one of the most common symptoms for endometrial cancer. It could also refer to supporting each other, like spotting someone, like in cheerleading, for instance, as well as identifying the symptoms that may indicate that there's a problem and you should go speak to your doctor about them. And so we really loved how these two simple words embodied all of these concepts to help us really create awareness and education about endometrial cancer, which is a cancer that we don't speak about very often or hear about. So we really thought that now is the time to address the lack of awareness about endometrial cancer for a multitude of reasons. There is a cultural kind of movement now towards empowerment in women's health and well-being. It's really been ushered in by Gen Z and the millennial generation. And there's an increased awareness of kind of gender biases that occur in healthcare. And so we wanted to really tap into an intergenerational sisterhood to help drive more conversations about gynecologic health, which is something that's very difficult to talk about. There's clearly a stigma when it comes to talking about gynecologic health and women's bodies in general. A lot of women report having their symptoms minimized or dismissed. And in our culture where women are expected to do so much, right? We have to do it all. We may dismiss our own symptoms, right? We'll just write them off as normal and go about our business. And so these things kind of contribute to a lack of education and dialogue about something that's very important for us to be aware of. And endometrial cancer is one of the only cancers where the incidence and the mortality is increasing. And aside from that, there's a really great disparity both in the incidence and the mortality that really impacts Black and African-American women. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were doing what we could to try to help address kind of the intersectional factors that impact this disparity in care.
Absolutely. It seems like post-pandemic, we really have identified just the need for humanizing moments and connection. And as I listen to you talk about the program, I hear this red thread throughout it, whether it's sisterhood or it is the reaching and meeting diverse audiences where they're at in a way that resonates with them, or finding these common threads, woman to woman, opening the conversation, which is, always historically been something that's been a little bit hard to do with the traditional advertising campaign. And I think like the influencer marketing is such a unique, smart way to sort of open that door. And I know, Amy, you have a lot of thoughts on the strategy behind this campaign, but it's one of just such strong storytelling through personal stories and these personal connections. And I think, we would love to hear from you on sort of the strategy that you cooked up for the campaign.
Of course. And the strategy really began, it's exactly what Michele was saying, right? It really began with understanding these women, right? And I shouldn't even say women. It began with thinking about these people with uteruses, right? Because anybody with a uterus can in fact have this cancer, right? And we wanted to look at the sizes of the audience. We wanted to understand where they were in their journey, right? So how far along are you that you feel so comfortable talking to your doctor, right? And you're getting all the answers, or are you over here on the left and you're afraid and you don't realize it's a symptom and you don't realize that perhaps it runs in your family, or you don't realize that you should be talking to others about it. So really understanding that audience, their mindset, the pain points, their needs, what's holding them back? Why aren't you talking to your doctor, right? Is it, as Michele was saying, because, you know what, I'm so busy, I have too many things to do, right? Or is it that culturally, as, an Asian American woman or something like that, I just don't think about my gynecological health, right? And so really thinking about who those audiences are, where they are in the overall journey of getting that diagnosis, and then pinpointing, what do I need to say to you to just move you one step forward, right? Just bump you up a step until we get you to your doctor. For this audience, for Spot Her in particular, we found that the Black communities were a really important community because, they weren't, going to the doctor, weren't getting diagnosed, and they were the ones who were just, suffering the most. And that's why we decided strategically, listen, let's put the investment here, and really focus in and plan around that, right? And so, getting smart around that. And so, Michele, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about how we got in there with this audience?
Sure. So like Amy said, the need is really great, right? So only 53% of Black women with endometrial cancer are diagnosed in the early stages. And that's very important because that's when you have the most treatment options. And the relative survival rate for the relative 5-year survival rate is much less for Black women than it is for non-Hispanic white women. And so we really wanted to focus on reaching the Black community in a place where they already feel comfortable, confident. There's credibility to the information that they're receiving. Because it's a really disproportionate it's a really disproportionate outcome, health outcomes that we're seeing, right? And so the incidence rates across the board are quite similar, but the mortality and the survival are so much higher and lower for Black women. And we wanted to make sure that, that we're making sure these are the women that are getting the education that they need to feel empowered to take action.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot actually of the campaign that we did, or the episode that we did with MMC one episode ago, but similar topics of just meeting audiences where they're at, but specifically the African-American women's population in direct correlation to healthcare outcomes. In the past, we've talked about information gaps or technology gaps as being sort of our barriers to various healthcare outcomes, but it's not even it's really evolved a lot from the information gap to the literally the comfort level gap, or if there's such a kind of laicized way to talk about that, it's where do I feel comfortable, where do I feel heard? Go ahead, Amy.
If I may, that's why the influencer strategy was so critical for this audience, is that we had to go to those trusted grassroots folks who could then deliver that message, right? Coming in as, a big pharmaceutical company, or hiring a celebrity to come in and say something, that wasn't going to make the impact. They needed to feel and see that it was somebody like them, somebody they could trust, somebody who had the same experience as them. That's the power of influencer, right? Because it's literally a person that you know and that you can see.
Yeah. Can I ask if there were other campaigns that you kind of took as inspiration for this one, or that either of you sort of looked at as a good model, or like this worked really well for this particular health outcome? Like, how can we maybe apply that to endometrial cancer, and what can we do? What can we learn from that campaign to apply to this campaign? Go ahead, Amy. I'll let you.
Yeah, awesome.
You can go first, and Michele can chime in or build on. Yeah, sorry.
So we ran a campaign for Otezla, and it was very much of it. So it was for psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis. And what we did was we worked with a number of influencers where where you could understand the day-to-day struggles that they had, even in their work, right? So, for example, we partnered with a renowned influencer makeup artist. And here's the thing, when you're a makeup artist, you're putting your psoriasis plaqued hands close to somebody's face, right? It is more apparent than ever in this person's job, because you can't hide it. It's your hands that are right here. And so it was very, it was a moment where we really realized, listen, that's the reality for everybody, right? Regardless of if you're a makeup artist or have any other job, the sensitivity you feel when you are so conscious of your body when you're near any of your coworkers. I don't care if you're in an office or whatever you do, right? So we tapped that insight. And that's why we chose actually this makeup artist, is that like, you want to make sure people understand that this person experiences what you feel, and maybe even hyperbolically. And you realize, you know what, this guy is truly feeling this, and I want to know how he's getting to this solution. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure you're just really getting at that core feeling, that core insight, right? Like, so I think anybody can relate to having a dermatological issue, and having that feeling, and just, allowing yourself to talk about it openly, which this influencer did, and how he solved it. And I think that with Spot Her, what we did was we found these people who were expressing, listen, the reason why I'm telling you to do this is because I just want to help you. Like, this is a pain point for the entire community, right? And so that's why it's so important, and that's why, like, really nailing that human trigger, that motivation and that feeling is important, because that's the content, right? The influencer is the brilliant deliverer of that content, but the content has to be emotionally right as well.
Yeah. And I know that in kind of talking about the background on this subject, we've talked about that emotional connection, that relatable connection, but we've also talked about breaking through the noise by being cutting edge, by being a little bit edgy, by being a bit bolder in the conversation than we've seen or been comfortable with before. And that takes some risk. I know you both have kind of encountered that through the Spot Here campaign, and would love to hear your thoughts, Amy, first on kind of how you presented that, because I would imagine as a client, Michele, edgy and cutting edge and being bold are not always words that you are probably super comfortable with when that campaign is getting pitched to you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that what we want to be always respectful of is our clients and their appetite for that edge. And, you know, obviously, like we live in healthcare, so there's compliance and there's all sorts of legal things you need to think about. But I think that when we first talked to Michele about this, we really just, I mean, it's the rationale, right? It's that you want to go in and we know that the Black African-American communities were the right community to talk to first. We knew that we had to break through in a strategic way. We had all the data that proved it. Probably bored Michele to death with 9,000 slides of data. But I think that that's how you convince on the creative, right? The creative, to your point, Megan, it has to be compelling, interesting, catch somebody's eye, but it can't just be creative just for creative sake. It can't just be like, I did this crazy thing in the middle of Times Square, right? It's the right thing. And I think that, I mean, I don't know, Michele, if you would agree, but I think we led to the right thing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And there were a lot of consumer campaigns that there are so many great ones. And I'm kind of like an ad geek. So, you know, I save them on Facebook or Instagram when I see them that are really great. And so I did challenge the team to dial up the emotion, right? So it's like, we can't push the boundaries in every aspect, but let's push the boundaries in hitting that right emotional note, and creating that sense of unity and that sisterhood. And you know, in pharma, we often are lagging behind our consumer packaged good friends and the other in other industries. And I'm very inspired by them. I think that there's so much learning that can be mined from the way that consumer brands operate, the level of information and understanding they have of their customers, what they want and where to find them is really incredible. And so I'm always open to and looking for ways that we can do things better. You know, and that is also the way the consumer brands have evolved, is really changing people's expectations for their healthcare interactions as well. And so as a healthcare industry, we need to find a way to keep up so that we're providing curated, tailored, individualized care the way that people expect from every other facet of their life. So yeah, so it's really incredibly important to try to stay as close to the edge as you can.
And honestly, that is that level of ingenuity and creativity and cutting edge is also what makes things memorable. And so in any campaign, when we're trying to be memorable or have that take home point that resonates days later, it's like, to your point, Michele, about the CPG brands, like that's what they do well. And that's what like these winning campaigns that we look at all across the board do well, and is that there's something stays with you. And I know that creativity has very much kind of been a value that you've kept at every juncture along the way in this particular campaign. Let's see, in terms of like video influencer campaigns, we know that they drive change, behavior change, but was there any particular way that you found yourselves consistently tracking the effectiveness or kind of measuring that the conversions, if you will, the conversions to actually getting into the clinic or booking the appointment?
Yeah, so measurement is now you're talking my math game. Yes. Measurement is mission critical. I mean, without objectives, without sort of monitoring where you're going, we made sure with this campaign that we were able to define what those key performance indicators would be. We need to move to awareness, right? So we've already discussed, like, we're going from very low awareness, limited awareness to awareness, right? For me to get them to clinic, that's already multiple steps later for this set. It may not be for a different segment, right? And so what we did was we really monitored, a participation and engagement with all the influencer content, with all of our events, with all those things. But what we also want to look at is, taking a deeper dive into all the things that we are measuring, right? So for example, when you partner with a Black influencer, right, you can't assume that 100% of those followers of that Black influencer are Black. That would be a complete and gross assumption, right? And so what we want to do is we want to look, okay, well, maybe 75% of the followers are Black, and maybe 20% are white, and maybe 5% are Asian or whatnot, but Latinx. And so basically, what we want to do is make sure when we identify influencers at the up top, that we're choosing people that are impacting the specific audience that we want. But then on the back end, we want to make sure that they're making the impact that we want, right? Because in the end, let's say you choose somebody, but it turns out that only 50% of their audience is your intended audience. That's not the biggest bang for your buck, right? And so we want to make sure we're making the impact, because this is a tremendous investment, right? We want to make sure we're doing it right. So we did quite a bit of measurement. We're actually rolling into 2.0, 3.0, whatever 3.0 of Spot Her. We're very excited, but we always learn, right? You got to learn and apply, and that is in all of earned media, digital, and an influencer.
In terms of the size of influencer audience, were you more interested in micro? Were you more interested in big names? Did you kind of look for a sweet spot, a little bit of everybody? What was, when you find the most effective campaigns run by or led by influencers, I guess, where is it that you were finding the most success, and is that consistent with Spot Her as it is with the rest of your campaigns that you work on?
So I'll lob it to Michele on Spot Her specifically, but I think that there's no easy answer to that question, right? So I think it really depends on, are you marketing as Michele was saying, to our CPG friends, right? And what kind of dent are we making? I mean, if you're talking about a CPG product that may be is targeted to all of Gen Z, you're going to have a different strategy than you would for this very tight Black community set. So I think the answer to your question is I have no answer, but it's but the way we did it for Spot Her, Michele.
Yeah, so for Spot Her, our primary audience was women ages 40 to 65, because that's they're in the age range where you're more likely to be diagnosed with endometrial cancer. And our secondary audiences were women 20 to 39, because they should be aware of the risks and the symptoms. And they're also able to kind of have those intergenerational dialogues and really drive those conversations with a little less maybe embarrassment than their mothers or aunts or grandmas. And then women diagnosed with endometrial cancer. They already have been diagnosed, so they're at a different place in their experience, receiving treatment and that sort of thing. And then kind of carved out from there, right, our focus on reaching Black and African American women. And so for us, it really is, for Spot Her, it really was important to have the right mix. So we had some patient opinion leaders who are women who have been diagnosed and have been living with, they've survived endometrial cancer. And you had one of those women, Shonda Foster, on one of your earlier episodes of the series. And so we have amazing voices like that from within the community who can speak with utmost authenticity about what that felt like and their entire story. And then we also had, I think, what you would call like micro influencers who have some other organic connection to educating about endometrial cancer and women's health. So whether that's being like a kind of a fitness and overall general health kind of influencer, or some other sort of lifestyle influencer that we think might reach the target audience. We had a nice, really cadre of influencers that we worked with. We launched Spot Her initially during COVID. And so we really led with this digital first approach where we were very focused on working with patient opinion leaders and influencers. You'll notice our hero video on the website is an animated video, right? Because it was safer, it was more responsible than going into someone's home and trying to film real people at that point. And then in phase 2, we kind of shifted our perspective to start to include in-person events where people have the desire to start to gather again. We did at that point bring in a celebrity spokesperson. So now it's we're continuing our grassroots, but we also have the grass tops, right? We're reaching more and more women. And Megan Good had a uterine cancer scare herself. So again, someone with that experience who understands what it feels like and really feels strongly that it's really important to be aware and to have those conversations, to raise things to your doctor. And we continue the work with the micro influencers as well. So it's really important to find the right mix, I think, of folks and voices, credible voices who are reaching your audiences.
Absolutely. And I know that this is the 1.0, 2.0, and I feel like Spot Her is probably going to make it all the way to 10.0 in its evolutions. But as far as where you're at right now, Michele, can you speak to us a little bit about kind of like what Eisai has learned from this particular campaign? What are some of the takeaways that you're committed to applying in the future, or that make a lot of sense strategically to apply to future campaigns? Can you just talk to us a little bit about sort of the takeaways and the learnings that have come from this activation?
Yeah, absolutely. So just for some background and context. So as a human healthcare company, one of the paradigms that's a really important, it's really the heart and soul of our company, is the SECI model, or the knowledge creation theory, where you learn patient realities from spending time with them. You take that tacit knowledge, you make it explicit by kind of crystallizing, articulating what you learned, what you observed, what that might mean. You start to develop ideas, you share those ideas, you validate them with research, you prototype, you plan, then you implement. And in the implementation, you learn from actually doing that, right? So that becomes personal knowledge. It's internalized in a way that the meaning wouldn't be, right? If you're just kind of reading like peer reviews and things, that sort of thing, right? So it becomes personal because you've been part of that process. And so once you have a greater understanding of the people that you're working with, that you're trying to serve, you kind of start that spiral again, so that you can do better next time. Right. And so, so as Amy mentioned, we are getting ready for Spot Her 3.0. And as she also mentioned, kind of with the metrics before, you don't go from having no awareness to taking action. So it's kind of a continuum of awareness, action, and advocacy, right? So you're trying to move them along that continuum from, I've never heard of this before, what do I do, to taking the action they need to, and then eventually becoming advocates and helping other people do the same thing. And so as we get ready to plan for phase 3, we're really like looking back at phases 1 and 2 to see where were we successful, what else can we do to move people further along that spectrum, help them take action, make sure that we're measuring it, so that we're showing the value of the campaign to our internal clients. But I think for us, like the real common threads are really, leading with authenticity, letting that be kind of the primary objective, trying to build connection in a world that's like, it's so easy to be divisive, and really making sure that every interaction we have with each patient opinion leader, each influencer, each doctor that we're working with, we're making sure those are positive ones, so they can really feel that human in the human healthcare, and they can feel the human side of our industry. So those are kind of the learnings we'll carry forward for sure.
I think it's just refreshing too. I mean, I've also sort of been on the agency publisher side in this kind of work, and to have that shared mindset that the two of you both really have, where it's the baby steps, or it's moving one step forward, it allows the work to really be meaningful when it doesn't all have to happen overnight, that it really treats this human connection the way that a real life relationship is, in that trust builds over time.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, for me anyways, a key takeaway sort of in how this campaign unfolded. And I think maybe one of the really unique tenets of it all is that it's been this humanized relationship that almost mirrors a true real life relationship, which is very interesting and notable, I think. Amy, thoughts kind of about the future of where MMC is going to take the learnings that maybe you have had from this experience, and apply them, and where the future of influencer marketing looks like it's headed?
Yeah. I think that influencer is going to continue to trend upward. It's it continues to be a powerful way to interact with patients and doctors, and just the entire community. I would say next sort of future predictions. We are all going to be playing in the metaverse. We should not be afraid to take risks there. We've already seen some brands delve into the metaverse and have much success. It'll be a way to reach niche audiences. When you think about rare disease and things like that, I mean, where else to be but the metaverse, where you can find others like you, even if they live clear across the world, right? And it's an entertaining and brilliant place to be. So I think metaverse is probably my first thought. My second thought is new channels that are emerging. I know TikTok has been around, but for healthcare, it's like still this new and burgeoning channel, which I think is really important because everybody is on TikTok. So, and it's exploding with healthcare content, so the companies and doctors and people who have already taken advantage of it are already reaching quite a few people and delivering their messages. So how do we authentically connect and create sort of these viral, compelling, cutting edge things for TikTok? And Michelle nailed it. I mean, increased scrutiny. Like, you do not want to be caught being inauthentic. Like, this is not a game, right? We're trying to help people. Like, we're humans trying to help humans with their health, right? And so we have to find people that speak authentically and can have those conversations and have a right to be in those conversations. So I think there will be this continued scrutiny over time as well. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Some good parting thoughts there. We've really summed it up and have learned a lot about this campaign through it. I think those of us tuning in today are eager to apply the learnings that you've shared with all of us. So thank you both. Thank you, Michelle, for being here, and to Eisai. Thank you, Amy, for being here on behalf of MMC. This has been the PRovoke Media podcast. I'm Megan Keogan, and we are signing off.
Thank you,
ladies.
Thank you.